Hello, this is Carlos Samaniego with Tax Debt Live and Andrew Samaniego. How are you guys doing? Hey, Andrew. How you doing?
I'm doing well. The end of tax season here, and it took yesterday off, but now we're getting right into tax resolution season. So it's never ending.
What's interesting, guys, is that first and foremost, this is actually not live. This is a recording. We were planning on doing a live, but we're having some technical issues, so we still wanted to do it, so we recorded it. Next week, actually, Andrew may not be able to. Actually, I may or may not be able to do this. I'm actually going to be out in Connecticut next week. Yeah. So maybe Andrew might do this all by himself next week. That might be the option as well. So that's why I want you to join, Andrew, in case we can cover each other. What do you think about that?
Sounds great. If you have questions, go ahead and submit it through whatever video or comment section there is, and we'll pick it up on next week.
Yeah. So if you want to get your questions answered, if we're whether we're live or you just want us to cover that questions, you don't want to come on live and ask that questions. Best way to do it is you can definitely email us at carlos@taxdebtconsultant.com or andrew@andrewsamaniego.com. You can see the spelling of the names there, and we can definitely answer those questions. The goal of this show is to try to cover 2 or 3 questions that came in through the week that people are asking. The goal of the show is to share success stories. That's another thing we'd like to do. I got a huge success story to share today. And we don't want to be here, take a whole lot of your time. The goal today, we're trying to get out of here, make this a quick 20-minute, maybe 15, 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. But we're trying to, again, we're figuring this out as we go, doing a live show, attempting to do a live show as we try to do today. But the one thing that I wanted to talk about today, Andrew, is obviously tax season is over, as you can tell. I actually took yesterday off as well. In fact, most of your tax professionals out there are not working right now. They normally take a couple weeks off after tax season.
They do.
Unfortunately for us, we deal with a lot of tax representation for people that got tax problems. Mm-hmm. And we tend to get right back to work. It actually tends to pick up pretty dramatically after tax season. But I did take my day off today. I actually forced Andrew to jump on today because he was taking off today. I think you're going to go do some golfing, right?
Yeah, we're going to go hit some balls on the range and practice my putting game. I realized that, I just started picking up the sport, and I realized that, driving your ball down range isn't the only thing you need to do. You got to be able to putt the ball in the hole, even though it's like 5-10 feet away. So that's something I just got to practice, and like everything, we all move forward with it.
Sounds good. I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule, Andrew, so you can do this. I told Andrew we got to do this. So anyway, guys, today I wanted to talk about, one thing I wanted to talk about is something that happened to me yesterday. I was actually planning on taking the entire day off, but I ended up getting a call from an IRS appeals officer, which is not normally that means that your case is progressing after when you're in that phase of challenging a tax debt. And this was a good call because they left me a message, said that they actually had some important good news to report to me. So, and what this was I had a client who many years ago ended up getting assessed with a tax bill of just over $190,000. Okay. It's something that this person was stressed out about, was dealing with it for almost 10 years, this tax problem, and didn't know how to deal with it, and just live with that fear and anguish of having to deal with this massive balance. And the interesting part,
what do you think made him move forward?
I think, well, for him, what finally happened is that he actually ended up getting that letter 11, that final notice of levy. So he had to move forward to deal with it. And we've talked about that in the past, and we'll definitely have shows that talk about that more down the line here. But I think that's what made him move forward. So he reached out to me, kind of gave me the history behind it. And I told him, the tax, the debt that was assessed to him were called substitute for returns. And that's where, if you're a non-filer and the IRS actually gets tax debt or gets W-2s, 1099s, gets third party sources that you earn of income, they have the right to assess a tax return because you didn't do it. So I had told them, kind of told them what was going on and what needed to get done. And we had been working with them for about a year, just over, I believe it was just over a year now. And I got the great news that yesterday that they've actually wiped out $190,000 of that tax debt.
Wow.
It was about $3,500, about that much that needs to get paid, they said. But imagine that, Andrew, dealing with almost $200,000 of tax debt to gets wiped out for $3,500.
Yeah, it's definitely a life-changing experience there.
It is. And even at right now, today, he still does not know. I'm literally going to call him up a little bit later today and give him the great news. And I'm just excited about that. But Andrew, that's a classic example of, a lot of times people have tax debt, and I know you've had clients like this. People have tax debt that they don't really owe the tax debt, and they don't know how to deal with it. Whether it was something like a substitute for return that got assessed to them, and they're starting to collect. And you were just telling me not too long ago, Andrew, that you have somebody that came to you says, "I don't even know how they came up with this number." Right. And that's typically what's happening.
Yeah, it's exactly what happened. So usually, if they go multiple years without filing, this person went, I think, 15 years without filing. They get a substitute for return on them, and then they get a notice saying, "Hey, you owe $30,000 for 2018." And because they didn't file that, the statute of expiration date or the statute of expiration doesn't go until the tax is assessed. So when they assess the tax in year 2026, it goes 10 years from there. But anyways, they get a substitute for return. We have to call collections, and then usually, depending on how much the tax debt is, it might get assigned to a revenue officer. And like you were saying, like even after you go talk to a revenue officer and you apply for one of those programs we talk about, either a payment plan, an offer, or currently not collectible, it might go to appeals. And so a lot of people don't realize is there are many different people you might have to go through in order to resolve the solution.
Yeah, it's just, the most important thing to understand, guys, is that just because the IRS says you owe tax doesn't necessarily mean you owe the tax. In fact, I remember seeing a study that it was a very high percentage that tax notices and tax due notices that people are getting, a lot of them are just incorrect assessments, and you have to know how to fight that, because as I told a client earlier today, our tax system is basically set up that you're guilty until you're proven innocent when it comes down to taxes. If the government says you owe the money, you owe the money until you can prove you don't owe it. And the IRS is very you think the IRS does this when you take somebody like the state of California or Cali Claw, and I've talked about this in the past, is the state of California, they will assess a tax debt on you, even though they didn't get any third-party information.
That's right. You had a license, and they're going to see what's the average that license usually makes in California, and they're just going to charge you that.
Exactly. So, and this brings me up to the last thing. Today we're not really going to answer a question. It's just we wanted to share this. It's just share something with you that's really important. The IRS actually, Andrew, they just made an announcement recently that they're planning on launching or have launched a tax debt help website to help people with their tax debt. Now, here's what's interesting about this. Bottom line, the IRS is not in the business of helping you pay less taxes. I truly believe, I was looking at this page, that this is basically just a funnel for the IRS to start collecting information about you regarding your tax debt. And you're going to give them information that they could potentially use against you, because there are situations where exactly like the one I just explained. Okay, what if my client that had this $190,000 tax debt actually went onto this website, starts giving them all this information, bank account information, asset information, what's their job? To collect on the tax debt. Their job wasn't to challenge the tax debt, right? That's not their job. They're not going to figure that out for him. So had he used that, guess what? He's paying back $190,000 of tax debt. So again, I understand what the IRS is trying to do is to help people, and I honestly think that page might be good. You owe the tax, the tax you owe maybe a few thousand, $10,000 of tax debt. You owe the tax, and then you want to try to figure it out. It might be a great tool for you to be able to get help. But you know what? For the average person, that maybe they got multiple years of unfiled tax returns. I would think, why in the world, if you're a non-filer, would you go in there and start inputting information for them to use against you to start collecting on you until you've actually talked to somebody that can legally help you?
Yeah, for me, that's like the equivalent of like going to the police who's accusing you of a crime and like them saying, yeah, just tell us everything you know about this situation, and then they pin it on you. And so one thing I would say is always get a second opinion. Always go to someone not on the other side of the board or the other side of the table.
Let's try to prove you guilty, right?
Right. And again, many tax firms have a free consultation. Just get the free consultation and see what they think before you start giving other people random information or the IRS your information.
Well, what's funny is that one of the things I did notice on that page, it really does not have like one of the most powerful options a lot of people have is that currently not collectible status. It doesn't give you that option to really run your numbers through that. It basically says, call us to collect some more information about that. Again, it's like going to the police department and trying to prove you guilty to find out more information. And it just, again, this just got launched. And again, we're speculating right now, but it makes me really nervous. It kind of, I'm sitting here looking at it. It creates a false confidence. I think that's what it is at most. What happens if you're assigned a revenue officer? What happens? There's a bunch of what ifs here, and that really makes me nervous. So ultimately, you were saying something, Andrew?
Yeah, it's like I want to go back to like the currently not collectible status not being on there, and you want to go back to, okay, why is the reason? One, because the IRS's job is to collect from you as much as possible, as fast as possible. They don't want to give you that option.
No, yeah, that's nervous. And then the other thing, obviously, I noticed, and it's an IRS website, so I understand why that's not. This next thing is, it has nothing about your state. What if you're in a state like California and you have a state of California, a Cali Claw problem? The IRS don't care that you got a California problem, and we both know, and the way we operate, when you got a state tax problem, we almost need to look at that first, deal with that, so we can use whether it's an installment agreement you're getting on with California to use that on your collection, your financial statement. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff, and I'm pretty sure we're going to talk a lot more about this as it rolls out. But again, if you happen to see that, I'm pretty sure the IRS is going to highly promote it. Personally, I think it's a way to collect information for them to start collecting on you as aggressively as possible.
Right. Kind of reminds me of that IRS, like the free file program they had, and then that got canceled immediately. So I bet you this might either get canceled or, these big tax companies are going to find a way to, cancel it because they're just collecting too much information on you, and something that you need to get representation on. So
yeah. And you know what, guys, I'm actually, if you go to my blog, I'm actually going to write an article about this, kind of the things that are like red flags. I think that'd be a good article. Definitely probably going to send an email out to my list in regards to that. But you know what, guys, again, we wanted to keep this short. Again, what do you think? Do you think Friday afternoon is better for you guys? I think it is. I love doing this Sundays, but you know what? A lot of people really don't want to be dealing with this on Sunday. Family time. My home studio is not as bright as here at the office. So I kind of like this a lot more. So, and then, and as you guys know, Andrew is actually expanding the business out to Monterey, California. So if you know anybody in Monterey, California, have them reach out to him, reach out to me. You know what? We'd love to make an introduction. He's going to be golfing a little bit more in Monterey.
Yeah, the whole reason I started to pick it up. So.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, with that, guys, I thank you so much for joining us on Tax Debt Live. Today's recorded, but Tax Debt Live will be live going forward. That is the goal. And Andrew, thank you for taking the time off on your day off to join us. Bye-bye for now.
Problem.
Take care.